everyone. Welcome back to another episode with the Crime and Coffee Couple. My name's Allison.
And my name's Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, Al, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
I'm good. It feels like it's been almost a week since we've done this.
Yeah, it has been. And what are you wearing?
Thank you for asking. I am wearing, for those YouTubers out there that can see us on YouTube, I'm wearing a Chicago Bears jersey and shorts, I'll have you know, in case you wanted to know, which you don't, but I'm going to show you anyways.
He's pretty excited, folks.
Yeah, it's NFL season. It's finally here. Finally. Like, I just have something to watch on TV, which is, I can watch all day Sunday. Now, the whole family's gotten into it. We make a little bit of like some kind of crock pot thing and usually an appetizer or two. And it's just good time. Everybody gets around. It's just fun.
We're doing Chicago Italian beef.
Oh, okay.
And buffalo chicken dip. And you got some like pretzel bites.
I got some pretzel bites from Costco. It's a special occasion. It's the first NFL Sunday season game. I'm so excited. The Chicago Bears are my favorite team. So if you're a Packers fan or something, we usually have people that say like, I like the Packers and stuff, but we're not like friends anymore just for the next few months, and that's okay.
No, we're still good.
No.
Remind the listeners or tell the listeners, I should say, what is the rule on Sundays in terms of what I can ask of you?
So anything like during the game, like especially the Bears game, like you can't be bringing up like things that are like plans and stuff like, oh, we really need to do this or that. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, generally speaking, there's a rule like I'm inaccessible from 1 p.m. until 10 p.m. or something.
I joke about that, but
he is joking. But during the Bears game, do not speak to this man because he will not be happy.
Okay, and then I sound like a total loser, and I get it. Don't worry. If you think sports are a waste of time, they completely are a waste of time. I agree with that, but I happen to like it, so I'm sorry. So, actually, I'm not sorry. It's just something I like. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm going to stop saying sorry, but I get so agitated about this.
I see that. You're getting verklempt.
Like, it's just so much fun. But the thing is, like, I ask for 3 hours once a week. Once a week, just 3 hours.
Yes, I know. And what hours do I get during the week?
Every other time. You get access to, like, I'll leave you alone every single day if you want me to, but I just want to be not asked to do anything at all for like from 1 to 3 o'clock or 1 to 4 o'clock. And that's really not a whole lot to ask. That's all I say. I'm like, okay. So don't I say, hey, can you wipe up the like, no, I'll do it at 4:30. I will do it at 4:30 or 5 o'clock, or I'll do it at noon. I just won't do it between 1 and 5.
It's going to be a long 16 weeks.
Now, the nice thing about football, yeah, you're right. Between like 1 p.m. here on the East Coast to like 12:30 at night, basically, you have football all day long. So it's pretty
extreme.
Now, anybody who doesn't give a crap about football just totally tuned out.
Lost listeners. Thank you, Mike, for that.
Speaking of lost listeners, maybe we've gained some from somebody that appeared on a cable television show yesterday. Raise your hand if you appeared on cable television.
It was me.
Allison Pernecki over here was on Court TV yesterday. It just came out of like left field, nowhere. A producer reached out. She's like, hey, you tell the story.
So it was yesterday. So we're recording this early. We're recording this on Friday. So it was Thursday. And I was telling my coworkers, because I'd been up since 4 a.m, I was like, oh man, I am so tired. I almost feel like I have the flu. Can't wait to just get home and relax. So I get home and Mike's like, so we have this opportunity. The producers of Court TV reached out about the Michael Shaver case that we happen to cover in October of 2023. They would like you to be on the show as a contributor. So my initial reaction is like, oh my gosh, hell no. I'm way too intimidated by this. It's so far out of my comfort zone. I can't even possibly express it to you.
Like, I don't know if there's anybody that would be less comfortable than you. I'm sure there's like similar people, but I don't know if anybody would be less comfortable.
And it was the unknown. First of all, I'd have to stay up till almost 10 o'clock at night. And two,
which is an absolute stop right there.
They didn't give me a clue as to what I'd be expected to say or what exact topic we'd be talking about within the case. And that scares me because I'm just somebody that likes to be prepared. I don't like the unknown. As
like shown by your hours of research in every episode.
But I knew it was an opportunity that I could not let pass me by. If I did, I would have regretted it. So once it was all said and done, and honestly, while we were recording and I was speaking, it was great. It was leading up to it and then in between two segments because I participated in one and then they had two other guests and then I came back on. My heart was beating so hard out of the center of my chest. I was fearful that you could hear it on the air.
Yeah, and I know exactly how that goes. I used to call into like radio shows as a kid, and my heart would start beating. And if anybody that's called into radio shows in the past, like it would have to be older people because now nobody calls into radio shows. But you always hear that like before you get on. I don't know if you know about that at all.
I don't know. I'd never called into a radio station.
Oh, I used to do it all the time. I love being on the radio. So, and here I am as a podcaster. But it was like that, and as soon as that comes on, it's like because you're going on air. You are actively on air, and it's like so intimidating. But you did fantastic. You did really well.
Thank you so much. And the host was just so nice, and he was very welcoming and helped out a lot.
The name of the show is like VPI, Vinny Polimo Investigates.
Is it Vinny Politan?
Politan?
Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot his name. But Vinny Politan Investigates. It was like It was on Thursday at 9 Eastern. So if you find that episode, then Allison was on it. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
She was sitting right there in her same spot.
I'm glad I did it though, but I'm also glad it's over.
A couple listeners pointed out it was awesome that the skull wallpaper made its way on there.
Yeah.
It looked awesome. Fantastic.
Yeah. So it was a lot of fun. I thought it was good to get out of my comfort zone.
Yeah. Welcome to the show if you've heard about us from Court TV.
Yes. So anyway, are you ready to get into this?
I'm ready.
All right. So this is the murder of Samantha Josephson. So in March of 2019, 21-year-old Samantha Josephson was a senior at the University of South Carolina. She was mere months away from starting law school on a full scholarship at Drexel University's law school when she went out with her friends. And really, the purpose of their outing was to celebrate the fact that she did get accepted into law school. So the night ended with Samantha mistakenly getting into a car that she believed to be her Uber. Her roommates who had been out with her that night filed a missing persons report with the Columbia police after they were unable to reach her the following afternoon. So this is the story of what happened to Samantha after she got into that Uber. So on the Thursday night of March 28th, 2019, Samantha and her friends headed out to a popular location in the Five Points district in downtown Columbia. It was approximately 2 a.m., now in the early hours of Friday, March 29th. And Samantha left the Bird Dog Bar. She utilized her Uber app to catch a ride home. So this area, and one of the pictures I'm going to post on Instagram, it is exceptionally congested with young people. So we're not talking, when I'm referring to this story, that she is standing out on a dark street corner by herself. There are hundreds of people out on the streets with her. So she is standing outside waiting for her car to come. And again, the area does get very congested. The streets are crowded with young adults looking for a bite to eat after a night out of drinking, or like Samantha, they're waiting for their rideshare app to arrive to take them home. So Samantha had come to the University of South Carolina from Robbinsville, New Jersey, where she majored in political science. She was getting ready to graduate in 2 short months.
You know what their mascot is?
No.
Gamecocks.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. You just wanted to say Cox.
Well, they say go Cox, so go Cox.
So she had gone out that night. Like I said, they were celebrating the fact that Samantha had gotten into law school. And the night was winding down. It's a Thursday night, early Friday morning now. So Samantha was getting tired. I'm assuming she probably had classes that day. She did not want to end the festivities for her friends. So she kind of, did the Irish goodbye. That's how I love to do goodbyes.
Great way to do it. Although I miss my friends, I like a nice hug before we leave. So it's really hard to do an Irish goodbye. But if I'm a business thing, I don't need to hug my business people. So I just kind of say, all right, I'm taking off.
You just slink out because otherwise people are always like, oh, what? You're going?
Yeah, you don't want to deal with
that.
that. Like, I just want to go home to my pillow.
Yeah. So she just kind of left the bar and she went out to call on her Uber. And since Samantha didn't want to, like I say, spoil the festivities, I don't know how much of an announcement she made to her friends that she was actually leaving. So soon the Uber app indicated that the ride was confirmed. The driver was en route to Samantha's location. Both surveillance and phone records showed that she was speaking on the phone with her boyfriend as she was standing on the corner waiting for her ride. So Samantha was supposed to meet her driver to the right, but instead she mistakenly went left. So because of this, the driver was unable to find her, and eventually the driver canceled the ride because he was unable to find her. So Samantha was completely unaware of this fact and continued to wait on the street corner for her driver who wasn't coming. So despite the late hour, again, there's still tons of people milling about. And as she's waiting, surveillance video depicted several other ride shares coming to a stop at that time. Samantha thought maybe that was her ride. You could see she kind of approached the car until she realized, okay, that's not my driver. She turned and walked back to her spot where she was waiting. So each time Samantha went back to the corner to wait for the car that was supposed to be a dark colored Dodge. However, instead, a dark colored Chevy Impala drove up. And I don't know about you guys, I am not a car girl. I don't really know makes and models of cars. It doesn't mean anything to me. So I could easily get into a Chevy Impala if I was intended to have a Dodge pick me up. That would be an easy mistake.
Yeah.
So video later showed the Impala had circled through the 5 Points area for 15 minutes before he actually stopped where Samantha was standing. So the car was basically circling the area. Just 5 minutes earlier, you could see it going around and around repeatedly. And as Samantha is standing outside by herself, the Impala did a U-turn a block away, and then it came back around and approached the location where she stood. After the fact, when investigators are watching this video, they basically coined it as like a shark just circling in the water, just waiting to strike. So as investigators reviewed the surveillance footage, it was clear that the driver had been on the hunt that night for a victim. So the driver could clearly see that she was waiting for a ride to arrive, and they took advantage of the situation.
Yeah, they're targeting somebody, anybody. And unfortunately, in this case, it was Samantha.
Right. And, it's an area where it's college kids and drinking's involved and whatnot. So it's a vulnerable situation that this driver was taking advantage of.
Yep.
So obviously, by watching the video, you could clearly see that Samantha believed that this car was her Uber. During her night out, Samantha had consumed alcohol, but review of the footage showed that she appeared to be in full control. She was wearing kind of wedge sandals. You could see she was standing on the corner talking to her boyfriend on the phone. She was not stumbling or anything like that. She was in control of her movements and actions. So as Samantha climbed into the back of the Impala, it was the last time she was ever seen alive. The darkened windows of the car made it impossible to see what was happening inside, who the driver was, etc. But the car pulled away, and it ended up driving in the wrong direction away from Samantha's apartment. And it wouldn't have taken her long to realize that something was seriously wrong. However, the driver had engaged both the child locks as well as the function of putting the window down ahead of time. Wow. And again, it's all about the shark in the water that they drove out with the intention of picking up a victim that night.
So sick. Premeditated, just not sure who they were going to get. Just like you said, a shark, just somebody, a predator waiting.
Yep, it's so scary to even think. So Samantha lived in a place called the Hub Columbia, and it was a high-rise apartment building downtown, and she shared it with her roommates. And when they didn't see her or hear from her later that morning, they just made the assumption that she was just staying over at somebody else's apartment. And as the day progressed and she still hadn't returned, their worry only grew. So Samantha was a server at a restaurant. She was scheduled to work that morning. And being an exceptionally reliable employee, Samantha was never late. If she was going to run late, she would call someone and let them know. She was never a no-show. So the fact that she did not arrive for her scheduled shift was a major red flag for everyone. So her friends went on to utilize a Find My Friend app to see where her location was. They realized that at some point in time, her phone had basically just stopped tracking. It was in the Rosewood neighborhood, only blocks from where they were hanging out that night in 5 Points. So Samantha's friends immediately went back to the location where they last knew her to be, which was the Bird Dog Bar. So they asked the owner or workers of the bar, hey, we need to see your surveillance video. We can't find our friend, and we last saw her here. So they pulled it up, and as they watched their friend climb into the back of the dark car, they realized that now is the time. We need to call the police. So Samantha was reported missing at 1 p.m. that Friday, about 11 hours after she vanished. As investigators reviewed the footage themselves, because of course they went out to the bar after the friends called, they obviously realized that now they were not dealing with a missing persons case, but an abduction. So Samantha was consistently in contact with her family. They were super, super close. She had her mom and her dad and her sister, and she would call them on a daily basis. But that day, they had not heard from their daughter. So a bolo, or be on the lookout, was released. It indicated that Samantha, who had been born on August 13th, 1997, had dark hair, brown eyes. She stood at about 5'7". Police could see from the video that Samantha had gotten into this black car. They could see in the video that it was a late model Chevy Impala, but they were unable to, again, I said they couldn't see the driver because of the tinted windows. They also could not visualize the license plate. So police knew that they were truly working against time. Everything happened very quickly in this case. They knew that this was a dire situation and that they needed to find Samantha as quickly as they possibly could if there was any hope in finding her alive.
The whole 48 hours thing.
Oh, just so scary. So investigators were later alerted to a possible suspect after her debit card or credit card had been attempted to be utilized multiple times at two different banks. One bank was a Wells Fargo ATM. It was about 5:45 in the morning. It was in Sumter, South Carolina. This is about 45 miles or 72 kilometers away from campus. So then this person moved on to another ATM. They tried 9 times to get into the bank account unsuccessfully. This was more in the area of where the college was in Columbia. So each video recording showed the suspect, but you could not see a single thing about them. They had a hood that was basically tied extremely tight around the face. There was maybe a bandana obscuring like the lower part of their face slash mouth.
So they're definitely hiding themselves.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
So the point is truly in this video, you couldn't determine the race of this person, really even the gender of the person. Maybe you would make the assumption that it was male, slenderish build, but there's truly no way of saying anything in detail about this person. So then the staff at a Wendy's drive-thru contacted investigators and reported that they may have seen the suspect in his car because, of course, they're releasing the information about the bolo with this dark Impala, et cetera, et cetera. So Wendy's contacted investigators and they said this person came through our drive-thru. We noticed that they had a white sheet covering the headrest and draped over the back seat of the car, obviously trying to obscure the back of the car. Yeah. So there was no sign in the video that was pulled from Wendy's of Samantha in the car that they could see. So obviously Samantha's parents were soon notified of the fact that their daughter was likely abducted. And this is Marcy and Seymour Josephson. So they immediately headed towards South Carolina. They were driving from their home in New Jersey. They were obviously in a complete state of despair, panic, etc. And they were about 4 to 5 hours into their 11-hour drive when they got a phone call from the Columbia police. They were basically saying, guys, what's your ETA? And after Seymour hung up the phone, he just felt his heart sink inside of him. He knew when they arrived in the area of the campus that they were going to be faced with horrific news. Yeah. So what Marcy and Seymour were unaware of as they made their drive was that tragically at 4 p.m. that Friday, this would have been about 14 hours after Samantha went missing, 2 turkey hunters had been in a wooded area off a dirt road in Clarendon County. This is about 65 miles or 105 kilometers from the campus in Columbia. And while they were, walking around trying to hunt, they came across a deceased female with wounds to her head, her neck, her face, her upper body, her leg, and her foot. And sadly, they did come to find that this victim was Samantha. She was covered in her own blood. Police in that department area contacted the Columbia Police Department requesting a photo of Samantha. So they pulled a photo from the surveillance video of when she was standing outside the bar waiting for her ride. And it was clear to see for investigators that the victim they see there is wearing the exact same clothing that Samantha wore in the surveillance video.
That's sad.
Samantha was laying on her back. Her shirt was lifted. Her platform sandals were broken, but they were still attached to her ankles by the straps. And, just watching the video of her walking to her death trap of this car.
Having no idea.
Just
thinking she's going home and she's talking to her boyfriend and whatever. It's just,
And the celebration, they're out celebrating the fact that she's getting into law school. She has her whole life ahead of her that was bound to be successful. And it just ends just in one night. And that's just so heartbreaking to me.
Yeah.
So her fingernails appeared to be torn and broken. Because you could tell she fought her attacker. An earring was missing from her ear. It has never been recovered. Based on the lack of blood that was at the crime scene, it was very clear that she had been murdered somewhere else and then moved to this location. When Seymour and Marcy finally arrived at the police department, they were escorted into a conference room and informed that a female victim had been found in Clarendon County, but due to the extent of the wounds on the victim's body, they were yet to be 100% certain. They couldn't say for sure, though they suspected that this was their daughter. I mean, how do you tell a family that? It's got to be the worst job of being an investigator.
Yeah, and I'm just continuously seeing that horrific look on their faces, and you got to do your best to be empathetic about it. And unfortunately, it's your job.
So Seymour and Marcy recall the moment when they then had to make the hardest phone call of their lives to New Jersey to tell their older daughter, Sydney, the devastating news that her baby sister was gone. And Seymour, this is so hard to say, he's standing at a police department in Columbia hearing the news that his baby girl is gone. And then he needs to call New Jersey to tell his other daughter that her sister is never coming home. And all he could hear was her, Sydney drop the phone and just begin to wail. And he's helpless, and he was unable to even be there to comfort her.
I just want to hug her, be together, all three of you.
Right.
And how if you get told really horrible news or something, and you feel that pit in your stomach or whatever, and it's imagine that times a million. And then, so that's just being told your daughter is found and unfortunately, murdered.
Yeah.
And then, oh, by the way, now you got to go call your other daughter and tell her the same thing so she can experience the same thing you just did, and then you can't do anything about it.
You can't do anything about it. You just hear her wailing, and there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
You can't take it away. You can't even hug her. So police vowed to the Josephsons that they would find the faceless person that drove this dark Chevy Impala who killed their beautiful daughter. In the meantime, students and residents within the community were obviously living in fear, knowing that this predator was still on the loose, this murderer.
Just random murder. Who the hell? I mean, I know we do these horrible cases every single week, multiple times a week. And it's who just drives around and looks for a young lady, college age, and just murders them and leaves them in the middle of a field? Where does that even start to sound like a decent idea in your mind?
And that's just the thing I think in my head, were you watching TV, watching the clock, and you're like, okay, it's about 1 a.m. I'm going to head out towards the bars and find myself a victim.
Now's the time.
Now's the time. It's Thursday night. Ugh. It's just mind-boggling. What could go through somebody's mind to do something like this? And obviously, Samantha herself wasn't targeted. It was just going to be anybody. Right. Anybody that was standing out there vulnerable that night was the victim. And this is a person that's driving amongst security cameras everywhere, witnesses everywhere. I mean, obviously, there's no thought process here. No. There's no, rationality.
And that's the thing with laws. They're not worried about getting caught.
Not at all.
They're kind of already accepted that they're going to go to jail or kill themselves or whatever. It's that's the desperation.
So, you're on a college campus. All the family members that have kids at this university are probably freaking terrified. I mean, if our daughter or son was at this university, I'd be like, you have got to stay inside
with as many friends as possible.
Exactly.
Arm yourselves, whatever it takes.
So obviously every available officer in the area was out on the lookout for this dark Impala.
And firefighters, I'm sure, everybody.
Everybody, all hands on deck.
Yeah.
So prior to starting their shifts, on-duty officers would watch the surveillance video from the night of Samantha's abduction over and over just to make sure that the image was fresh in their minds. So now we're moving on to Officer Jeffrey Kraft, and he began his shift, and he, of course, watched this video over and over, and he decided to go on patrol in the very area where Samantha was abducted, and this was 5 points. So he is circling this area for hours and hours and hours on end. And within a couple of blocks of the exact location of where Samantha was taken, he sees this car.
Oh, thank God.
It was about 2:30 a.m. on Saturday, March 30th, 2019, just about 24 hours after Samantha had been murdered.
Crazy. I can't believe they came back.
Oh, man. So as the lights of the patrol car flashed to life, Officer Kraft could feel his adrenaline just shoot up. He noticed that it took the car a couple of seconds longer than it really should have to pull over. So as the driver...
Well, yeah, because the person in there just murdered somebody.
Of course.
Yeah.
So as the driver pulled the car to the curb, Kraft could see movement inside the Impala.
Oh, man, you got to go up there expecting the absolute worst. This person knows they are screwed and they will shoot anybody or kill. They just murdered an innocent woman. Like, you know, this is a horribly dangerous situation.
This person would be very desperate at this point. So at the time he was pulling the car over, Officer Kraft was unaware at this point in time that Samantha's body had actually been found. So he has no idea. He's pulling this car over, hoping there's some shred of hope that Samantha is alive.
Like in the trunk or something.
Yeah, and tragically at this point, she was already gone. So as he approached the Impala, he immediately smelled the distinct odor of marijuana. The driver of the car was asked for his license and indicated that he did not have it on him. He admitted that he had smoked marijuana earlier, which obviously was BS because it was immediately, obvious.
It was earlier, right when you pulled me over.
Exactly. So actually this comes around to help because then they were able to search the car. So he was asked to step out of the car and he was told that he had been pulled over because his car matched a car that they were on the lookout for. Within seconds, the driver, who was wearing a gray sweatpants and gray sweatshirt, bolted, was very fast, and began running down the street and easily outran the officers that were present on the scene. So in the meantime, the officers that remained at the Impala noted that there was a female passenger inside the car. She told them that the driver's name was Nate.
Okay.
Because of the pungent odor of marijuana, like I said, officers had reason to search the car. Obviously, they don't give a friggin' hoot about marijuana, but they needed a reason to be able to look in this car. And I'm sure just the fact that it matched the car that was taking Samantha was enough.
Yeah.
So as they began to look around, they found a set of keys with a pink keychain attached, as well as a pink iPhone. When they glanced into the back seat, they could clearly see blood.
And this chick is just sitting in this car?
Sitting, yeah.
And she only knows his first name? Like, she just got to know everything.
No, she knows.
Okay.
And I'll tell you more about it. She actually, and I believe this is the same person that comes back to truly help this case. So officers knew that at that moment, the car was likely exactly where the murder happened. They know it didn't happen where Samantha's body was found. They're seeing the blood in the car. They know she was taken in this car. This is probably where the murder took place. So it's officially a crime scene. They step back. They call in the crime scene unit. So in the meantime, the suspect was caught and placed in handcuffs about 2 blocks away. The man was arrested. He claimed that he was feeling sick with the flu. So because, people's rights are protected, they did have to call in EMTs to have him medically cleared in order to be interviewed, which he was. So the suspect was soon identified as 24-year-old Nathaniel Daniel Rowland. He was very evasive with questioning. He denied being in the 5 Points area on the night that, the previous night, I should say, when Samantha was abducted. He said rather he was attending house parties. However, when officers are like, okay, what house parties? Who were you with? He could not be, specific at all, give no details whatsoever.
You need an alibi, buddy.
So nobody could say he was with me that night. We were here. Here's evidence, et cetera, et cetera. He also denied being anywhere near the town of New Zion. This is where Samantha's body had been found. However, investigators quickly learned that his parents lived in the small town of New Zion, and they described it that this is a place you don't go to, you don't drive through. It's a very specific small town location that you'd only go to for a specific reason.
Not on its way to anywhere.
Exactly.
You go to New Zion to go to New Zion.
And lo and behold, their home sat maybe a mile or two from where Samantha's body was ultimately found. So he was very familiar with this location. So police were baffled that Rowland would have been bold enough to drive the very car he abducted this young girl in like 24 hours later.
I say it every time. Thank goodness for idiot criminals.
So they asked one of the officers in a video I watched, they're like, what's your mindset behind there? He's like, you'd be amazed at how stupid criminals can be. And thank goodness that they are, because otherwise they may not have caught this guy.
Amen.
So only 6 weeks after Samantha was murdered, graduation was held and a seat was reserved for her in her honor. And Marcy and Seymour were in attendance at the ceremony, and Samantha received her diploma posthumously. Can you imagine how heart-wrenching as parents that your daughter should be having this pivotal moment in life, getting her degree, with the fact that she's accepted into law school with a full ride scholarship and she's not there. It's just an empty seat.
Just a reminder of how much was left.
Gut-wrenching.
Yep.
So when Samantha made the decision to attend the University of South Carolina, her parents were nervous. Obviously, anytime your kid's going off to college, there's worry. She's far from home. She's in an environment that, is very different and farther from the Northeast where she grew up. But because they only wanted their daughter to be happy and to live a full life of her dreams, they fully supported her decision. And they felt that being on campus, she would be safe.
You got to let your kids live, let them experience life a little bit. And unfortunately, nothing wrong with the parents. They wanted her to experience life.
Yep, they were good parents. And it's scary to let that kite string out and let the control go. But it's part of letting your child grow up. So as Samantha headed off to college, Seymour instructed her to always utilize the Uber app. He had it tied to his credit card because, of course, she's a student. She's getting ready to go to law school. He didn't want her not to utilize it because she was fearful of the price. And I can promise you we would do the exact same thing with our kids.
Absolutely. No matter, I'd rather pay $7,000 and then be mad at you afterwards instead of like something bad happening.
100%. So he said, each and every time you are going to be going home, just use the app as a safekeeping, never fathoming that it would be this very thing that led to her death. Realizing that college students tend to go out, they stay out late to the wee more hours of the morning. It's a dangerous time. You could potentially be walking around the area at 2, 3 in the morning. Sure. He just wanted her to utilize this app so that she would be as safe as she possibly could. When Samantha left the bird dog on that night that she was abducted, she did exactly what she should have done. So now it's time for police to prove that it was Nathaniel Rowland who was the one that was driving this black Impala, because of course he's claiming, wasn't me, somebody else was driving the car that night. And truly, you couldn't see that it was him in the car.
No.
So he, is saying somebody borrowed his car. Now it's time to prove that, no, buddy, it was you.
We need to find his DNA somewhere.
Exactly. So surveillance video did not prove that he was driving the car when she got inside. Also, the videos from Wendy's and the various ATMs also didn't depict truly his face. So the autopsy concluded that Samantha had been stabbed a total of 120 times.
Oh my gosh.
She had not been sexually assaulted. No DNA from Rowland was found on Samantha's body, including under her fingernails, which were clearly torn and broken. When Rowland had been arrested, he was wearing multiple layers of clothing. Obviously, this could have prevented Samantha from scratching his skin directly. Police realized that it was going to be up to the state's police forensic team to now focus on this Chevy Impala, because the evidence is not on her body nor his at this time. So they're like, you gotta comb this car, you gotta find something.
Yeah, we need it. Something here, whether it's tire marks or something that's unique just to this only vehicle. We got to find it.
And there were some unique things, like I'll say at one point the rims were very distinct. But they wanted to tie and directly link Nathaniel Rowland to Samantha Josephson.
Nail this guy.
So they found a footprint on the inside of one of the backseat windows, which proved that Samantha had struggled to free herself. And I can't imagine knowing as parents that your daughter was like kicking her feet in desperation, not knowing what was going to happen to her. It's just sickening. So the car was processed for any and all DNA, fingerprints, hair, as well as any paperwork, any garbage, anything they could find in that car. So they came upon this letter, and it ended up being an eviction notice that had been written by a female friend, possibly a girlfriend of Rowland's, which led investigators to the property that was addressed on this letter. So this is the property of Maria Howard, and she had known Rowland for years. And at the time of Samantha's murder, he had been regularly spending the night at her home. Obviously, she was getting fed up with his shenanigans, hence the eviction notice. So the day after Samantha disappeared, Maria met up with Roland. She was the one driving the car. He's sitting in the passenger seat, and she's noticing that he's making attempts to clean the car. He's wearing rubber gloves. He's wiping down the console. She saw him grab some sort of tool that had a knife attachment, and he began to clean this knife, this tool. And she could see what he's wiping appears to be blood. So Maria, of course, is completely confused, and she said that she repeatedly asked him to explain what is going on, and he would only tell her to mind her own business.
This is my business. It's right in front of me, you
Exactly.
idiot.
I'm seeing this happen. Why is there blood in your car?
Yeah.
Nothing good happened. You have no cuts on your body. Why is there blood in your car? So police searched her home in order to corroborate her story, and in the garbage outside, they found valuable evidence.
Yes.
This included the knife, which ultimately came down to contain both Samantha and Roland's DNA.
Yes.
It was wrapped up in a plastic grocery bag, as well as used wipes and paper towels, because obviously she's saying he was wiping down the console. These are dirty and have, visible blood. Roland's clothing was also found in the garbage, and this is the clothing that Maria said that she had seen him wearing over the past couple of days, and this was notable to her. Like, why aren't you changing your clothes? It was covered in blood, and there was a black leather jacket. There were markings on the jacket that looked like they could be from somebody's fingernails raking down it. And again, we know that her fingernails were broken.
Yeah.
So because of the eviction letter that they found in this car, police were able to collect this evidence before the garbage service had a chance to come around.
That's why it's so important to quickly find everything.
Right. And that's same story if you listen to our episode on Joey Communale. It's same thing. Like, had they missed that garbage, this killer could have potentially gotten away. Potentially. So they also asked Maria about the surveillance video that was taken from the Wendy's, because of course we know that the employees at the drive-thru said they saw this white sheet. She said, yes, this was in the car. So we know that was his car.
Yep.
So this was the late morning to early afternoon after Samantha had been abducted. And it's just so disgusting to me that after you have murdered this innocent girl, you're going and getting a burger?
I'm hungry. I'm going to get some burger and fries.
What?
Crazy.
What is wrong with you?
And not to mention, also, you're throwing all the stuff away at somebody's house that you're associated with. Like, I don't want to give tips to all these idiots, but I mean, there's a lot better ways to get rid of things that they can't track it back to you.
But again, this is the same guy that was driving his Impala in this very area 24 hours later.
And really quick, if you're like talking to Officer Kraft and he's like, yeah, I'm going to patrol the area he was, you'd be like, no way, man. He's going to be far away from here.
Totally.
And
they assumed that their driver had gotten out of town for sure.
And thank God Officer Kraft did it.
Thank goodness. So obviously they want to make sure Maria is telling the truth, and that's why they were asking about what she saw when she got in the car. And this is where she's saying, I got in the car, I noticed this white sheet that was draped over the back seat. This is, of course, before they told her or said anything about the Wendy's thing. So they knew she was a reliable witness. So obviously this sheet had been put there to try to obscure the blood from the back seat, because Jackass wants to go get his burger from Wendy's. He's not going to clean the car. He's just going to drape a sheet over it.
Yeah, that won't be suspicious.
So the prosecution desperately needed Maria to testify against Roland, but she was terrified, not only for her own safety and her own life, but because of her child's. And as the trial began, the prosecution knew to be prepared about the lack of DNA evidence anywhere on Samantha's body that could tie Roland to the crime. On day 2 of the trial, Maria Howard agreed. She bravely took the stand to testify against her boyfriend, Nathaniel Roland.
So was Maria the one that was in the car?
I believe it must have been.
Okay.
Possibly. I'm not saying that for sure.
Okay.
They did not name the woman that was in the car with him when he was pulled over that night by Officer Kraft.
But thank God she stepped up. And,
Thank
I mean,
goodness.
you have to as a human being. Come on. This, like, you got to where credit's due. Like this, you make sure this scumbag goes to jail.
Right. And she's a mother herself. And obviously she's trying to protect her child. And that was her fear. But she also knows that, Marcy and Seymour are parents and their daughter was murdered. So I give great kudos to Maria for doing this.
I'm sure it was very hard. And I'm so glad she came to this conclusion.
So Maria indicated that the first clue that something was wrong was that day when she noticed that the visor that she wore as part of her uniform for her job at McDonald's, it was missing, and she knew she had it in the Impala. She remembers leaving it exactly where she had put it, in the back window. So when she's asking Roland, "Where's my hat?" he says, "It's in the country."
Okay.
What a weird thing to say.
Oh, in the country. Okay. Well, let me know when you get it back from the country.
So, of course, she's saying, "What, the country? What do you mean by that?" And he said, "Well, it had blood on it." And she said, "Why was there blood on it?" And he said, "Mind your business." That was basically his flat statement for everything this girl saw in his car was, "Mind your business." So each time she pushed and tried to clarify what was going on, he would continue to repeat this statement over and over. She spoke about how she saw dried blood on the dashboard next to the seat as well as the back seat. She also saw the sheet that was draped over the back seat, which matched what was seen, like I said, in the Wendy's video. And according to Maria, on the night of the murder, Roland was at her house. She went to bed. She woke up sometime in the early morning hours. He was not there. So Maria continued to text him because he was her ride to work. And she's saying, "Dude, where the heck are you?" He didn't respond, but then all of a sudden he shows up. She noticed he was wearing the same clothes that he had worn the night before. So this was when she noticed that her work visor was missing and there's traces of blood inside the car. Roland was supposed to pick her up after her shift. He never showed up. When Maria got home, Roland was there. He still wore the same clothing. He agreed to take her to pick up her young daughter. And this was when she was driving the car and she sees that he's making attempts to clean the car. He's wiping things. He's utilizing cleaning wipes. They had a chemical smell like bleach. She saw him cleaning the murder weapon. It's like this tool, this multi-tool. It had a knife attachment to it. He told her that he did not want her daughter to ride inside the car because of the blood that was inside. Yet he's telling her over and over, "Mind your business."
Yeah.
So when they got home, Roland left and came back later. Suddenly, he's got this rose gold iPhone in his hand. It's in perfect condition. She asked him, "Where did you get that?" He says, "Well, I'm getting it ready for you to use." And she tells him, "I don't need a phone." And Maria admitted that when she started to see news reports on TV about Samantha in this black Impala, all of a sudden the puzzle pieces, horrifyingly enough, started to fall together. She realized that this person that was in her life, in her child's life, was responsible for Samantha's murder.
So scary.
Of course, the police ask her, "Why didn't you call us right then and there?" She says, I was terrified for my life and my daughter's, what he would be capable to do if he knew I was calling on him.
Yeah, he walks in while you're on the phone with the cops and then all of a sudden you're dead. Like,
He's
it's
a murderer.
totally understandable.
Yeah. So obviously Marcy and Seymour Josephson were exceptionally grateful for Maria's testimony, her bravery.
She sounds like she really knows her stuff. She was on top of everything. Like,
Very
I
much.
knew I put my hat there. I knew he was washing that knife. Like, she nailed it.
Very much so. And sadly enough, after she did go on to testify, she received death threats for testifying against him. By who? I don't know, but she did.
Oh, this scumbag's friends, probably.
Yeah. So on day 3 of the trial, a witness who worked at a cell phone repair shop took the stand and indicated that his store's cameras depicted a man who came inside on the morning of Samantha's abduction. The customer attempted to sell Samantha's cell phone, and the employee positively said in the courtroom, "That is the man that came into my shop." And he said, "That's Nathaniel Roland." He arrived in a dark Chevy Impala. Roland would not accept the $125 offer that this man, said, "I'll give you for the phone." So he ultimately left with the phone. Obviously, then he's taking the phone and telling his girlfriend, "Oh, I got it for you." So the man, as he's standing inside the cell phone shop, the phone was not locked, and it allowed him to actually see a picture of Samantha on the phone. So it was not registered as lost or stolen at that point. It was unlocked. How it was unlocked, I'm not entirely sure, but he plainly saw a picture of what appeared to be Samantha on the phone. So the Josephsons indicated that since their daughter's brutal murder, they could only imagine in their head over and over, every time they closed their eyes to go to sleep at night, what their daughter lived through or tried to live through on the night of her attack. And that was obviously horrifying enough. But now they're sitting in the courtroom and they're faced with all the details, all the evidence, which made it so much worse than they could have ever wrapped their heads around. Investigators indicated that in the early morning hours of Friday, March 29th, 2019, Samantha Josephson inadvertently climbed into the back of the Impala that was driven by Nathaniel Rowland. He obviously did not work for Uber or any other rideshare company. At some point after the car left the 5 Points area, Samantha, who had been obviously able to realize very quickly that he was traveling in the wrong direction from her apartment, knew that something was wrong. But she couldn't get out of the car. The child locks were engaged, the windows were locked. She obviously tried to fight her attacker based on the fact that her nails were broken and torn. They also argued that scientists couldn't be absolutely certain that Rowland's DNA was on the murder weapon. They're arguing that. And it's this multi-tool double-bladed knife. The defense called no witnesses and Rowland did not testify. During the trial, the prosecution spent a week presenting evidence. They called nearly 36 witnesses to the stand. Closing arguments were held on the 6th day of the trial, and the prosecution focused on the fact that Samantha's blood had been located all over Rowland's car, as well as on the blade of the knife that, he was seen by Maria actively cleaning inside the car and thus then found in the garbage can on her property. Her own footprint was found on the inside of his car. Other evidence included cell phone tracking data that pinpointed Rowland's location. So, of course, he's claiming, no, it wasn't me. I lent my car out. I was at a house party. Well, his cell phone tracking data shows he was in that very area of where she was abducted from.
Really? And
yes.
He said he wasn't there?
Yes.
Okay.
So DNA collected from Rowland's fingernails also matched Samantha's genetic material, and DNA from both Samantha and Rowland were found in the trash because we know he was wiping up the blood that was inside the car. Prosecution argued that Rowland had his eyes firmly fixed on Samantha Josephson as she left the Bird Dog Bar. He was circling. He saw her. That's what prompted him to do that U-turn and turn around and pull back right next to where she was standing. So he headed out toward 5 Points at about 1:43 a.m. in search of his victim on March 29th. The prosecution pointed out that the distinctive custom rims on the car could be seen circling the area, making multiple U-turns before it jumped the curb and pulled into a handicapped parking spot where Samantha stood, and then she climbed in. So forensic pathologist Thomas Beaver performed Samantha's autopsy on March 31st, 2019. He took the stand during the trial to discuss the injuries that he found on Samantha's body that led to her death. Much of the 120 stab wounds had been inflicted to the right side of her body. Some were defensive in nature. Many of the wounds inflicted. So when he's doing the autopsy, he's kind of confused because he sees like double cuts and he's trying to figure out what kind of a weapon could have possibly inflicted these wounds to her body.
Well, can't they tell him what they think the weapon
No,
was?
because at that point in time, I don't think they had found the tool, perhaps. I don't know the timing of it. So he's seeing wounds that are inflicted by two parallel cuts next to one another. However, the majority of the wounds were single stab wounds, which meant that the murder tool had been opened and closed during the attack. Sometimes it was double-bladed, sometimes it was single. Dr. Beaver explained that a typical body holds somewhere about a gallon of blood, obviously based on your size and your weight and etc. It's different, but typically somewhere around a gallon of blood. He found only 20 milliliters or 2 tablespoons of blood in Samantha's body because she had bled out as a result of these horrific wounds he had inflicted to her body. Neck wounds were found to her jugular and carotid arteries, and Dr. Beaver found that her hyoid bone, which is in the upper neck, had been severed. These, along with the stab wounds to her head, were lethal. It would have caused death within minutes. On Tuesday, July 27th, 2021, the jury came back with a verdict after 1 hour and 7 minutes of deliberation. They found Nathaniel Rowland guilty of the murder and kidnapping of Samantha Josephson.
Slam dunk guilty.
And he was immediately sentenced to life in prison.
Awesome.
So, of course, Samantha's family is just collapsing in grief that their daughter's never coming back, despite the fact that her killer is sentenced and given to, face justice. but they're relieved that this man can never hurt another person again.
Yeah.
Seymour, Marcy, and Sydney Josephson were given the opportunity to face Samantha's killer and speak. And Marcy said, her dreams were my dreams, and her death was my death. I close my eyes and I feel what she endured at his hands. I used to have dreams for her. Now all I have are nightmares. 120 times. The final moments, her bare feet fighting and kicking for her life. I visualize blood flowing from her body, her beautiful body. 120 times. For what? For $35 and a college student has in her bank account? Because really, what was the motive?
Just a need to kill, obviously. Like, I'm really curious about this guy's like past and stuff.
Right. How could this be his first time?
And like you said, we've said in many episodes, a lot of times there is no past, and it just so happens it just struck them. This is what I need to do.
So when Seymour Josephson stood, he spoke about how in the 2 years since his daughter had been viciously murdered, he has been in so much pain that he has contemplated suicide because the pain has been almost too much to bear. Obviously, he said, I wouldn't do that to my wife and my daughter, but he just is living in this immense pain.
Well, then also this scumbag Nathaniel
wins.
Yeah, he gets like another victim. You know, you can't let him do that.
He struggles to even look at photos of his late daughter because when he does, his head is just filled with images of Samantha struggling to survive in her last violent moments of life in this car as she pressed her bloody foot against the car window. Ahead of his sentencing, Nathaniel Rowland had the balls to stand and say, I know I'm innocent, but I guess what I know and what I think doesn't really matter. I just wish the state would have done more in finding out who the actual person was instead of being satisfied with detaining me and proving my guilt. And then Judge Clifton Newman called Rowland a heartless person and indicated that his had been the most severe murder he has ever witnessed during his time in court. Based on the evidence presented, it was clear that Rowland was Samantha's murderer, and he said, there's 1,000 trails, each that led to you. All of the evidence, each speck of evidence, not simply beyond a reasonable doubt, but at the highest standard the law requires, all points to your guilt. And then they give his mother a chance to speak.
Who gives a flying crap what his mother has to say? I mean, it's not her fault, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
But at the same time, she doesn't have anything to say. Like, I don't care.
In the presence of Samantha's family, this woman says what a caring and respectful person her son was.
Oh, go to hell.
And she voices his innocence. And that's when the judge turns to her and immediately cuts her off and says,
shut up. Sit down.
You will not continue saying this, and reminded her that her son had been convicted by a jury for murdering
He is
Samantha.
guilty of murdering Samantha. He did it. He did it. And like, I love what the judge said about like, there are so many trails that led back. Like I'd love for a parent or somebody like that to be like, luckily she got you in the end, man, because you didn't cover up anything and you're an idiot and you're a loser. And I'm so glad the rest of the world can never see you again because you're worthless.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
So the Josephsons' 2 daughters had always assured their parents that when they utilized a rideshare service, they routinely verified that with the driver that they were there to pick them up specifically. So Marcy assumes that when Samantha approached the Impala, she likely asked, are you here for Samantha? The driver, who we know now to be Rowland, would have said yes. After the fact, they realized that the safest method is to ask the driver the name of the customer and then allow them to give the correct name. And then if they don't, you know not to get in the car. So with this, Marcy and Seymour Josephson turned their grief into action, and they created the What's My Name Foundation. So it's hashtag What's My Name Foundation to both honor their daughter and to protect others from avoiding danger. You know, they can't save their daughter. It's too late. But could they save someone else's life? So, you know, this foundation is, you know, totally geared towards keeping people safe while they're utilizing these ride-sharing apps. Their mission is to educate the world on rideshare safety, as well as supporting charitable organizations to provide college scholarships to selected high school seniors. The goal of the foundation is that before any customer enters the vehicle while utilizing a rideshare service, they first ask this question: what's my name? So the U.S. House passed a bill called Sammy's Law, which requires ride-sharing firms such as Uber and Lyft to match drivers and passengers. South Carolina legislature has also passed a similar bill that requires rideshare drivers to actually display their license plate number at the front of the car. Uber and Lyft have also implemented safety measures in response to Samantha's murder. This includes the installation of a feature that allows users to call 911 from the app. Marcy and Seymour said that during their time in South Carolina for the trial, they were just simply running on pure adrenaline. And by the time they got home, they were just living in a fog. The family of 3, who was once a family of 4, still think that maybe one day, they tricked themselves. Sammy will just walk through the door of their home. They're just unable to fathom that she's gone forever and they're never going to see their daughter again. And that is the sad and tragic murder of Samantha Josephson.
Well, thank you so much for telling her story. It's important, and it's a good reminder for us all. Just, you can never be too careful.
Right. And statistics show that ultimately speaking, ride-sharing apps are safe.
Yeah.
But there's cases out there, and it's important to put safety measures in place and to remember, ask the driver, what's my name?
Yeah.
Check that license plate before you get in that car or open the door.
Yep. And, like you said, there's a lot of people that don't know cars out there.
Right.
I always look anytime I get picked up. I'm like looking at the car. I always look at the picture of the person just to, and I'm not even a female that's, a teen, whatever, a young person that's, more liable to get picked up and whatever. And I have noticed in the past few years, you probably don't use the apps much.
I use them when I'm on my girls' trips with my friends, and I do check the license plate, but I am going to be going to Boston soon on a girls' trip, and I will think about the what's my name.
Absolutely. And just tell all your friends too. And everybody that's listening to this, make sure you tell the story. And that way you can hopefully save other people.
And I know that would be Marcy and Seymour's goal because, again, I know it's too late. Their beloved daughter that they loved and set free to go to college, and she was accepted into law school. She's gone.
Yeah.
But if they could protect somebody else, that would be a win.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much for telling her story. And if you enjoy the way that Allison researches cases and we deliver them, then a free way to support us would just be giving us a like and a subscribe and maybe a rating on your favorite podcast or YouTube platform, wherever you're listening or watching us. And also, there is the option to become a subscriber and get yourself an extra, 2 to 4 episodes a month. So,
yep, 1 a week. We release on Wednesdays.
Yep, every Sunday we have a free episode, and then on Wednesdays we come out with our bonus episodes. So go ahead over to Patreon or Apple Music or Apple subscriptions, and go ahead and you can go ahead and get a free trial on Apple if you want. It's like a 3-day free trial. Go and binge. I say it all the time, but I challenge you. I challenge you right now. So
thank you guys so much for being here. We appreciate you listening, and until next time, bye.